Welcome to CareTech. Last session we discussed WebAPI roadmap and we discussed basics of REST API and REST versus SOAP and authentication and rate limiting and what are the HTTP methods and what are the status codes in WebAPI and uh, we discussed JWT authentication and routing, caching, Redis caching, and in-memory caching, how to handle middlewares and what is the middleware and what are the dependency injection, how to unit test and integration testing. These are all topics we covered in the last sessions, and we day one from the day one we explained some interview prospective questions with the detailed answer, and day two also with the interview questions uh, detailed answers we covered. And today is a day three, and in this day three will today our day three like advanced topics and mock interviews, like how we will prepare mock interviews for the web API. Let's get into the video. Day three, practical scenarios and mock interviews. These all are the very advanced and professional questions and topics of the day three. And in these topics, we will cover like solid principles and design patterns and repository pattern and what API documentation and like uh, how you are deployment CI/CD pipelines with Azure DevOps and REST versus Graph QL, and after that we will discuss about WebSockets, and then after we will take a small interview questions with this concept, with the real-time examples, and after this we'll uh, after that we will create a one application with the all concept will cover like a cross and rate limiting and JWT authentication and routing, and those all concept will take another session with the live project. Mm, and let's we'll go to the day three topics cover, like what is design pattern, what are the design pattern is a software architectural patterns, like design patterns like main design patterns are CQRS, like command query responsibility segregation, like it is separate write and read actions, like it is like a separates like a read and write operation for the data stored into the separate data models, like whenever we are sending any data from server to backend, backend to database, like for reading we will create a separate classes and separate command queries. For writing, for reading, we will create a separate command queries, and for getting, we are creating separate command queries. That is called as a command query CQRS principle and CQRS design pattern. And circuit breaker. This circuit breaker is a very advanced design pattern. It is used in the microservices. Like it prevents the cascading failures in microservice architecture by monitoring service state and tripping circuit breaker when it is unavailable, like when the microservices, like if you are implementing the one microservices, if it is not like available at that time, the whole process will monitoring, and it is like tripping to the circuit breaker, that is called as a circuit breaker. And pagination design pattern, pagination design pattern, anyway we know, like a pagination concept in web API, like if we have a 1 lakh records at a time, we are not loading 1 lakh records. It will if we are loading 1 lakh records at a time, it will like get it will issue big issue for performance wise. So that's the reason, with the using of pagination concept, pagination design pattern, we will load particular amount of records at a time. These are the main design patterns in the web API, and some are other design patterns also there, like but in web API perspective, these are the main design patterns. Like if you are if you wanted to really enhance, like different design patterns are available. I will make a video. I'm planning to, like after the web API and .NET and .NET Core design patterns are a solid principle of separate videos. So that's the reason, like whatever the data need for this web API concept, so that design patterns and that solid principles has covered in this session. And next we are coming about solid principles. Solid principles is nothing but, like in the name only, like in a like every subject, like we need to like use some asynchronous, some like acronyms. So it that be that should be helpful for in interview perspective, like whenever, like suddenly, like in an interview, the fellow is asking like API and the solid principle. So we are confusing, like what is S and what is O and what is L and what is I and what is D. So that's the reason we will use for we will we will maintain like acronyms, so that would be helpful for like in interview perspective and anywhere. So solid, S stands for singleton. Singleton responsibility principle. A class has should be one reason to create and one reason to change. That is called as a singleton principle. Like if you are creating an employee class, that should be contains like employee details and those all things. And if you are modifying anything in that class, it should be it should be one reason to there with the employee class modification. That is called as a single responsibility. And open and closed open and closed principle. Classes should be have extension but closed for modification. It means class should open for extension. It means like for extension it should be open, but modification it should not be modification. If you wanted to extend, we can extend of the class, but modification is not possible with the open closed on. That is called as a open closed principle. Lisco substitution principle. L stands for Lisco substitution principle. Like a superclass, like it has a we can like objects of superclass should be responsible for object of subclass without altering the program concept, like in another way, like uh, parent class parent class can replace in the child class without altering the program concept. Like if you are creating any method in the parent class, um, it should be the it should be replicable with the subclasses also. That is called as Lisco substitution principle, like derived class also, superclass and derived class. And interface segregation principle, like interface segregation principles, clients should not able to force to the dependence interfaces. We can segregate multiple dependencies, sorry, multiple interfaces. Like we cannot force dependence, we cannot force interfaces like in a single interface. Like we will segregate interfaces like as per our need. So that is called as an interface segregation principle. And dependency inversion principle, high level modules cannot be depend on low level modules. Like a high level module is nothing but like uh, in a banking application, like deposits and withdraws and FDs. Those are high level modules. And like account opening, account opening and those low level modules are not depending on the high level modules are not depend on the low level modules. So that is called as a dependency inversion principle. In take as an example in the real time, like in real time example, the best real time example, I will also google it, like best real time example of like dependency. Yeah, we have a two classes, car and motorcycle. Both are implementing the iVehicle interface, like start, accelerator, and stop. Sorry, I will in the separate video. I will like in the best example. I'm not finding any best example of uh, dependency inversion principle in this Google also. So I will make a separate video for this, and in that we will cover with the real time example. And benefits of solid principles. With the using of solid principle, we can improve our maintainability. Like code become easier and understand modifying and updating. Enhanced, like improve the maintenance and increase the flexibility. Adapting the future requirements is easier to well-designed and loosely coupled components. Reduced complexity, like with the using of solid principle, like we can reduce the complexity of our code. Like reusability, we can reusable for that classes or classes or interfaces with the using of solid principles. And these are the solid principles and design patterns of uh, web API. And the deployment, we can deployment with the using of Docker or IaaS. IaaS is like on-premises deployment, and Docker with the using of Docker containerizations, like the using of any cloud platform. Suppose we are taking a example of like Azure. The using of Azure, like uh, when uh, when we are deploying using with the web API application with the using of Azure cloud, uh, like we will maintain containerization and consistency across the environment. We can implement like automatic build and test and deploy for the using of CI/CD pipelines. Uh, for CI/CD pipeline of Docker container, first we need to create a Docker container file. After that, we will like we will deploy that. We will create an image for the Docker image, and then after we will build the Docker image. So that will be helpful for that, should be possible with the Docker CI/CD pipeline. And example of deploying API Azure using Docker. This practical exercise, I will do the exercise part for easy understanding. And next topic is REST versus Graph API. While we are going to the containerization, see portal.azure. See, here we are creating a new container app. At the time, we will select container name and container image, and here in the next container, here we will take as a image source like Azure container or Docker hub container, and we will give as an image name and image tag and a command over, right, and a register, and those all things we will maintain here. And increase also we will maintain like HTTP and TCP. um, and tags, what are the tags we just now we create and just now we have seen. Those all things we will maintain in the Azure DevOps. Next, REST versus Graph. REST API have multiple endpoints but fixed data structure. It means like we have a multiple endpoints, but the data structure is fixed. And GraphQL, nothing but only one single endpoint, but dynamic queries. It means like on the endpoint is single, but we have a dynamic queries. That is the main difference between REST and Graph. And next, introduction about WebSocket. WebSocket. Uh, Once again, I missed one topic. Like what is a repository pattern? It separates the data access logic from the business logic. It means like it separate data access layer and business logic layer. That is called as a repository pattern. And next, API documentation. Like API documentation, we can achieve with the Swagger and OpenAI. Explanation of API document is like tools of generating interactive documentation. Like with the using of Swagger Open API, we can achieve with the documentation, API documentation. Yeah, we'll go to the introduction of WebSocket. Like, WebSockets are the WebSocket API invokes of our backend based content of the messages, and it receives the client apps unlike the REST API, which receive and responds to the request. WebSocket API. It supports two-way communication between client apps and server apps. It means like if you are sending any request from web browser to web server, like it requests the URL and handle the URL with the using of WSGI. WSGI stands for Web Server Gateway Interface. And if the WSGL is success, and we will get to the web server and will return HTML page. That is like WebSocket connection is connected with the web server and create WebSocket connection in WSGI. That is called as a WebSocket. Like it is two-way binding of client and server, two-way communication. That is called as a WebSocket. And WSGL, like Web Server Gateway Interface, it stands for interface that allows the web server to communicate with the Python-based application. Like WSGI, it communicate with Python-based application, like and with Django and Flask applications. Those application with the using of WSGL, we can achieve those applications like for WebSockets. So that's all day 3, and tomorrow we will discuss interview questions of day 3 session. Um, if you have any queries in this day 3, please uh, reach me, and if you have any specific comment, like specific doubts or anything, please comment in the below. And if you like this video, uh, please subscribe this channel. Next session we will discuss about day 3 interview questions, and after that we will demonstrate one project, live project, with the using of these all concept of web API, 3 days web API. And that's all. Thank you all. Bye bye. Have a great day.